Good morning, everyone. You know, it's been one of those days. I know we had a lot of laughter up here while Andrea was leading us. 9 o'clock was a lot the same. And I don't know, the trajectory of where things might go today. Who knows? I'm just trying to go with it. That's all I can say. It's been a lot of fun. Today, I do want to take a moment to celebrate with you all something important that's been happening in the life of our church. Over the last month, we have leaned into our Growing Forward campaign together, and I promised you all that today I would give you an update. If you'll remember, we are working to raise $2 million, a big piece of which is going to help us expand this campus so that we can welcome even more people into what God is doing among us. And as of today, we are at $1,641,283 that have been pledged. So we're 82% there. So good job, you guys. I'm looking forward over the next month or so to be getting your feedback on what some of those plans look like, and I think it's just going to be an exciting chapter for us. But last week, we launched together a brand new sermon series on followership. It's not a word that we use every day, right? If you were to go out and go to Barnes & Noble down the road today, you could walk in there and you could find probably a whole section that's dedicated to leadership. You can find all kinds of resources that are going to help you sharpen your skills, but you are going to be hard-pressed to find many books that focus on this idea of followership, on this idea of being the very best follower that we can be. However, there is one book that actually talks a whole lot about this, the Bible. In its pages, we encounter a leader who is worth following, Jesus, a leader who's good, who is taking us someplace good for our good and for the good of others. He is a leader who has gone all in on us and who invites us to go all in on him. That was our followership principle number 1 last week. Followers go all in when they find a leader worth following. And today we're going to shift our focus to principle number 2, but first I have a little story for you guys. You all know that it's no secret around here that I cannot grow any kind of plant, right? Like if my shadow but go across it, like it's going to wither and die. And most days, like I'm okay with that, right? Like who cares if I can't keep a flower alive for more than 2 days? Like I can do other things. But there are times where it kind of gets me down and it gets discouraging to me. And here's a great example of this. On Monday, I had just parked in my parking spot at work when all of a sudden my phone dinged. There had been a text message that came through to the entire staff, and it was this picture. It's a tree. But in case y'all don't know, that's Seth Fisher back there behind that tree. He is the person who sneaks in here every week and who keeps this place like warm and welcoming and clean. So if you ever see Seth, say thank you, okay? But Seth's standing there beside this tree, and I'm curious, where do you all think that this tree was growing? Parking lot, gutter, on top of the roof? Lowell got it. Did they tell you while you were there this week? No? You just knew. You just knew. Yes, this tree was thriving on our roof at the Melrose campus. Now, is there any dirt up there? No. There's some rock, and evidently there's a good deal of moisture from our HVAC units, and somehow it created good enough, conditions for this tree to start to grow. And so, it's just a little difficult for me to swallow the fact that a soilless roof can grow a plant better than I can, all right? And you better believe that fact was clearly stated in that text chat by my coworkers who call themselves friends, right? But who needs enemies when you have friends or husbands like that? So, the truth of the matter is, sometimes growth does happen like that, right? Sometimes growth, it comes up in these unexpected places, these places that are dry and desolate, these places that are hard and hopeless. Sometimes it seems like growth happens totally without us, or maybe even in spite of us. Kind of like that tree on the roof with seemingly no place to put down roots. growth can happen that way. However, much more often, you and I grow when we get intentional about it, right? When we prepare the soil of our lives, when we weed, when we water, when we position ourselves toward the light. Even then, growth is not guaranteed. It's not a perfect formula, right? But at least we're taking some ownership in the process. We are taking responsibility for our own health, and we are creating an environment in which we have every opportunity to thrive. We're doing the little that we can do so that then God can enter in and do what we cannot. And that is followership principle number 2. Followers own the process of their growth. So often I think we equate being a follower with being totally passive. You know, we equate it with being someone who kind of like sits back and just waits to be given permission, waits to be given a promotion, waits to be given a point-by-point plan by their leader before they ever engage. However, in reality, great followers understand that no one, absolutely no one, including our leader, can grow for us. They can want that for us. They can challenge us. They can encourage us in that direction. But at the end of the day, there's a key part for us to play. We have to cooperate with where it is that our leader is trying to take us. We have to take some ownership. And when we do, that's when synergy happens, especially when it comes to following Jesus. Our efforts, however feeble they might be, they get joined with the overflowing, abundant, infinite grace of our God. And when those two things are added together, what we get is something that is multiplied. What we get is something more than we could have ever expected. Because you guys, the truth of the matter is, our good God, he's really bad at math. All right? Anybody resonate with that? Any other bad math people in the room? Yeah, you can take solace in knowing God is with us, because with God, 1 + 1 does not ever equal 2. It always equals at least 3, and sometimes 10, and other times 100, and other times 1,000 over. It equals more than we even know to ask or imagine. Jesus, he tells a story in Matthew's gospel that gets at this. It's a story that encourages us to own the process, to lean in to our growth in partnership and in cooperation with Jesus. On this particular day in Matthew 13, Jesus he's accumulated this great crowd around him, which is not unusual, right? But on this particular day, the crowd has gotten so large that Jesus has to get into a boat and he has to back away from the shore. And when you read that, you might think, oh, like Jesus' personal bubble was being invaded, and so he needed to create this physical space. And that might have been part of it, right? But in all actuality, what was happening was like Jesus understood that like by going out on the water, this natural amphitheater was going to be created as his voice bounced off the water and the rocks that were back on the shore. And so once he had created this way for everyone to hear what he was about to say, he did one of his favorite things. He began to tell a story that's come to be known as the parable of the sower. And this is how it begins. It says in verse 3, a farmer went out to sow his seed. And this certainly would have been a very familiar scene that everyone listening that day would have seen at some point in their lives. In fact, as Jesus is teaching this, he might have been pointing over to a farmer who was doing this very thing in that moment. In ancient Israel, there were two primary ways that farmers tended to sow their seed. There was, you like took the sack of seed under your arm and then you went and you just scattered it as you walked through the fields. That tended to be long, with a path in between the different fields that were there. Or the other option was to take that big sack of seed and put it on the back of a donkey and then cut a hole in the bag and then just walk your donkey back and forth and let the seed fall out until it had all been scattered. Now, as that's happening, of course, there's probably some wind, especially if you're on the Sea of Galilee that's blowing through there. And so I think you can begin to get the picture that sowing seed in the time of Jesus was not like a precise science, right? This seed was going a little bit of everywhere. Sometimes it was going into places that the farmer probably preferred that it didn't. For example, Jesus says, as he was scattering the seed, some fell along the path, and the birds came and ate it up. Some fell on rocky places where it did not have much soil. It sprang up quickly because the soil was shallow. But when the sun came and the plants were scorched, and they withered because they had no root, other seed fell among the thorns, which grew up and choked the plants. I think we can all agree that none of these places sound ideal for a seed to grow, right? Kind of like the conditions over on the roof at the Melrose campus. But then Jesus says this: still other seed fell on good soil, where it produced a crop 100, 60, or 30 times what was sown. Whoever has ears, let them hear. Now, the problem was the people did have ears, including Jesus' disciples. They had ears and they could hear what Jesus was saying, but understanding what Jesus was saying was like a whole other ballgame, right? It's kind of like when my son starts to talk to me about astrophysics, and like about 3 seconds in, I'm like nodding along, but I have no idea like what he's talking about. The disciples, they were doing the same, right? They're listening to Jesus, but it's not really penetrating. They're not really getting what's going on. And so they go up to Jesus and they say, Jesus, why do you talk to people in parables? In other words, like, Jesus, can you just shoot straight with us for a minute? And look at Krista. She's like, yeah, shoot straight with us, Jesus. Can you dumb it down a little bit? Can you, put it in some layman's terms? And here in Matthew 13, we get one of the rare times where Jesus explains this parable to his disciples, and we get to overhear it. Now, to help us kind of process through what Jesus says to them, we gave you a little tool today as you came in. If you didn't get it, don't worry. We have more. You can get one on the way out. We're going to have it on the screen for you as you go through this. But this is something you can take and you can use it again and again. It's a way of visualizing this parable, and the hope is that what it will do is to help you to identify and kind of get honest with yourself about where you are in this particular moment. Now, the truth of the matter is we look at this and we all want to be the good soil, right? Like we all want to be the achievers who are doing it all right, but that's not really how life works, is it? The truth of the matter is we're going to find ourselves in all of these different places at one point or another. And so I want you to know today, like, no matter where you are, there is no shame. Sometimes you'll be the good soil. There are other times life is going to happen. Things are going to get hard. Things are going to get rocky. Things are going to get thorny in your life. And so the goal is not to make sure that you're the good soil today before you leave here, but the goal is for us to get honest about where we are. And so let's walk through this together. We're going to start in the lower right quadrant, the path, and we'll see what Jesus had to say about this. Jesus said, "Listen then to what the parable of the sower means. When anyone hears the message about the kingdom and does not understand it," and understanding would be like, isn't able to piece it together and to apply it to their lives. He says, "Then the evil one comes and snatches away what was sown in their heart. This is the seed sown along the path." And so in this season of our lives, if we find ourselves in the place of the path, we are kind of experiencing low energy in our lives and low stress. And that might mean that we're pretty comfortable, we're content, and we might not really want that disrupted. We might know that Jesus is talking to us, but we're not all that interested in growing. It's not that we're hostile to Jesus, it's just that we're not that open. And so the seed, Jesus' words that he's trying to sow in our lives, they tend to just like bounce right off of us, which means that they're easily snatched away. Sometimes that's where we find ourselves. Sometimes we're like the path, but other times we're more like the rocky soil. And this is what Jesus says about the rocky soil. He says, "The seed falling on the rocky ground refers to someone who hears the word and at once receives it with joy. But since they have no root, they only last a short time. When trouble or persecution comes because of the word, they quickly fall away." And so again, when we come back to the chart, when we find ourselves in this place, we still have that low energy, but we have high stress, okay? In this place, maybe we have been going along and we've been hearing Jesus, we've been understanding Jesus, we've experienced some growth in our lives, but then all of a sudden, life hits us. It has gotten difficult, and it feels like rocks are just being poured on top of us. Thinking about growth, when we find ourselves in this place, it just feels like another boulder on top of us. And so it gets very difficult for us to hear the words that Jesus is saying to us. Because we are shut down, right? We're feeling burnout, we're feeling bored, we're feeling apathetic. We're probably wondering if growth is even worth it. That is the lower left quadrant, the rocky soil. But then, yet again, sometimes we're more like the thorny soil. And this is what Jesus says about this. He says, the seed falling among the thorns refers to someone who hears the word, but the worries of this life and the deceitfulness of wealth choke the word, making it unfruitful. And so in this place, in that upper left quadrant, we're experiencing high energy and high stress, okay? When we are here, Jesus is speaking to us because Jesus never stops speaking to us. He's inviting us and leading us toward growth, but we can't hear him. Why? Because anxiety and worry and concerns, they're screaming at us in our lives. We're being fueled by fear and frustration. Perhaps we're being fueled by anger or even hostility. We are stuck in fight or flight. We are on high alert, trying to protect ourselves. And so much energy is going in that direction, there really isn't any energy that's available for growth. That's the upper left quadrant. And then finally, there's the good soil. Jesus says, but the seed falling on good soil refers to someone who hears the word and understands it, who pieces it together and applies it. This is the one who produces a crop yielding 100, 60, or 30 times what was sown. When we find ourselves in this place, we're experiencing low stress in our lives. Notice it doesn't say no stress. Does anybody notice that? We're experiencing low stress. It's not that stress is ever going to go away for us, and it's not that stress is always bad. Stress can be what motivates us, right? That activates us. But we're experiencing low stress and high energy. We're exhilarated, we're passionate, we're joyful, we're happy, and so we're open. We have the space to hear Jesus. We have the space to piece it together. We have the space to apply it to our lives and to follow where it is that he is leading us. The truth is, like we said earlier, we're not always going to live here. We can't always be good soil as we move through this life. But again, what's so helpful is for us to be able to create some space to recognize where we actually are. And then to not only recognize where we are, but then to consider, like, what is just one small step I can take toward health? We're not trying to jump directly to good soil, right? But rather we're just taking that one small step that we hear Jesus inviting us to take to move toward that goodness. And so I want you to think for a moment, what kinds of practices have you discovered that help you to lower your stress and raise your energy? This got risky in the last service, but I trust you all that we're going to stay on the rails, okay? I trust you. Actually, be yourselves. Please just be yourselves. But it's going to be different for all of us. And some of us will, like Herb Brown in the first service, he said, fishing. And I'm like, I'm so glad that lowers your stress and gives you energy. It would frustrate me to no end, right? So this is a personal thing. But for you personally, what have you found that helps you lower your stress and raise your energy? What was it? Running. Yes, sir. That's my go-to. Linda? Sewing. You sew beautifully, by the way. Yes? Your playlist. If you ever go by Kayla in the car, she's going to be rocking out. She's not going to see you waving at her because she's going to be singing at the top of her lungs. Let's see. Abe doesn't have his hand up, does he? He's just chilling back there. You got something? Lego building. We're going to find you that, what are they called again? The minifigure. We're going to find you that minifigure that you're looking for. He's on a hunt, you guys. I'm sorry, Molly and Eric. If you need to take up a collection, we're behind him, all right? We want him to have it. All right, somebody else. A practice that lowers your stress and raises your energy. Exercising. Yeah. Orange Theory. That'll do it. Yes. Being outside in nature. Scott saying, yeah. Listening for the birds. Yeah. I got to go to George and Janet's house on Friday, and it's a prime spot to listen for some birds. I heard beautiful birds. I had no idea what kind of birds they were, but they were beautiful. One more, maybe. Yeah. 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 That's how. Right? It's a journey, right? But yeah, being able to let go of everybody else's stuff and focus on yours. Yeah. Well, it's so important for us to discover what these things are for us, because in those moments when we find ourselves on the path or in rocky soil or thorny soil and wanting to take a step forward, we already have these resources available to us. We have such amazing people in our congregation who bring so much expertise to us. And so as I was preparing the sermon this past week, I thought, you know what? It would be really great to hear from one of our many wonderful licensed counselors. And so I've invited Jackie Newman to come and share with us today and see what kind of light she can shed on this passage. So let's welcome Jackie as she comes. All right, everybody hold your breath. Let's see if the microphone works, all right? Oh, I don't think it's on.
What did you do? I broke it.
I don't think it.
Hello?
Hey, all right, we got it. Well, first of all, thank you, Jackie, for being willing to talk with us. Maybe you can help us understand that, kind of like what's going on inside of us when we find ourselves in a season of high stress. Why does growth become so difficult for us, like physically, emotionally, mentally, and all the leads? Why does it get so hard?
In literally every way. Everything gets harder, right?
Yeah.
So in high stress, we get this surge of cortisol and adrenaline to our brain, and that kind of opens a trap door from our logical thinking brain, and it kind of shoots us back to the part of our brain that really is oriented towards survival.
Yeah.
So that's already going on. So our brain becomes less focused on growth and more focused on protection, because growth requires safety and connection. It requires us the capacity for reflection and to have curiosity. And that kind of stuff just isn't always accessible for just surviving, right?
Yeah, right.
So emotionally, we might get reactive. Mentally, we might get foggy, or we might feel flooded. And physically, we're beat.
Right.
And I think even spiritually, we can get disconnected too. And all of those things they're just out of just trying to survive, right? We're just trying to stay afloat. So.
Yeah. That makes sense. So all of our resources are kind of going toward just
to
staying
keep everything
in there.
vital, right?
Right.
Keep everything going.
And so kind of connected to that, in Jesus' parable, he talks about us not only hearing the words of Jesus, but understanding the words of Jesus. And so how does stress affect our ability to hear and to process what we're hearing and then to respond?
When we are in survival mode, sometimes I think we also might be operating out of kind of old historical narratives. Maybe a narrative that tells me I have to be perfect. I have to do this, a certain way, or I'm not enough, or I'm not lovable, right? Or I'm not valuable. And if that's a narrative that is playing just internally as I'm talking to someone, my brain is going to focus on protecting and trying to cope with those old wounds. And so I'm probably not really hearing a word that you say, right? If I am filtering all that through a shame narrative about myself, then I'm not actually hearing you. What I'm probably hearing is old shame. And so that's why under stress, we often react instead of reflect or or respond. I tell my clients all the time, we react out of our pain, out of protection, out of shame. But when we respond out of our groundedness, out of safety, or out of connection.
Right. We're not always in that place of groundedness, right? Sometimes when we find ourselves in that place where we're feeling anxious or we're feeling overwhelmed or exhausted or spiritually numb, our assumption is that we are failing sometimes. But from your perspective as a counselor, like what's really happening in that moment?
One other thought too, I think sometimes when we, if I'm talking to someone and I'm in survival mode, then I can also, like you might say something to me that's completely neutral,
Right.
but I see it as threatening because my nervous system is already like scanning for danger, right?
Right, yeah.
Okay, audience participation part.
Yes, absolutely.
Can I have a
We love
volunteer?
it.
Trust the process, y'all.
Oh,
whoa.
let's go.
Come on up.
Let's go. Come on up here. You get to come to the front.
Lowell, trust the process. I got you.
Are we going to trust Paul? Neither one of you cannot trust me.
Okay. All right, Lowell, I need you to hold this very lightweight, right? Hold it out in front of you. Okay, hang on. But maybe you
she's
face
got-
that way, not
she's-
over my head. Okay, just hang there. You're doing great. You good? All right, you got it. I believe in you. You got this. Just
Just keep
holding it.
going. She's going to talk
Yeah.
a little bit, but you
Laura.
keep on. Yes.
So if someone walks into my office and and they tell me, Jackie, I'm exhausted, I'm overwhelmed, I would probably look at them very lovingly and say, friend, welcome to being human.
Yeah.
Welcome to humanness. You are not failing, right? You're human. And you're probably a human who has experienced a lot of hard things. You're probably a human who maybe has felt the pressure, you're doing great, Lowell, the pressure to be a human doing and not a human being. And, so this side of heaven, feeling those things are normal. But if I am operating out of a narrative, maybe I'm operating out of a narrative that's like, you have to be perfect. You have to do X, Y, Z to be loved, approved of, accepted, right? If I am trying to do that all the time, then that kind of pressure is exhausting and painful, and it's not sustainable.
Yeah.
Right? If I am just operating, just trying to be enough, then maybe there's some deeper heart work that I need to be doing. Should we check in on Lowell?
Yeah, let's check on it.
Lowell, how are you doing over there? Killing it. You're killing it. Okay. About 15 more minutes, okay? What's interesting about stress is that sometimes the weight isn't the issue. It's carrying it, sustaining that over time, right? Without rest. And so, Lowell, at first the weight didn't feel unmanageable, right? Right. But over time, strain increases our muscles, fatigue, we get shaky. Lowell, you don't look shaky. Our body compensates, right? Our heart compensates for wounds. And so when we experience stress, it isn't because we're weak. It's because we were never meant to carry this over time without rest. So I just gave you a new name, Soul.
So,
Lowell,
I like it.
How do you
Yeah.
feel about asking for some help?
It's my Hebrew name.
Lowell/Soul, would you be willing to ask for some help?
I don't need help.
He's got this. Captain America can do this all day.
Church is at 11:30. You can talk all you
Dang. All right, he'll be here next week. He'll still be standing up here with the weight. Do I have a volunteer for maybe for just a little, just a spot, Lowell, up here? Any volunteers to help him out?
Okay, I'm getting tired.
Carla, y'all give Carla a hand. Here she
Hey, Carla.
comes. Now, oh, good save. Good save. All right, Carla's gonna
Do I need to help Lowell here?
help Lowell out.
Okay.
Now, don't take it from him, right? But You can.
It's shaking up, y'all.
I mean, you can help. All right, Lowell, how does that feel when Carla helps you out? Okay, take a deep breath, both of y'all. Deep breath. Right, she didn't take it away from him, right? And even if she had taken away from him, would it have been gone? No, it still existed. So, all right, friends, good job.
Good job.
Way to go, Lowell.
You can put it down.
Lowell/Soul. That was a good workout. You're welcome.
There you go. All right, Jackie. So maybe there's somebody here today that feels like they've been holding that weight a long time, right? They feel exhausted, they feel overwhelmed, they feel burnt out or numb. And so if they're in that place, what are some of the practical ways that they can start cultivating that good soil?
I think one of the lies that shame or stress can tell us is don't be a burden, right? Handle it yourself, figure it out. But Scripture consistently moves us toward connection and community, right? Not isolation. And so being brave enough to share your reality with somebody. Because, the weight didn't disappear, right, when Carla came up. No. But it became significantly easier to carry, right, when we have someone help us. I think another reason that we become depleted is because so many of us only stop when we break. God did not create rest as punishment. I think he created it as wisdom for humanity. Because rest is not just the absence of work. Rest is the presence of restoration. And so, some of us haven't put that weight down in years, or maybe ever. And so asking for help, right? Not doing it alone, learning to play, learning to rest, reflecting, not distracting, even though healthy distractions are okay sometimes. Getting honest with my limits instead of forcing my way, barreling through them.
Yeah. So, one of the things we're talking about today is our role, like our part in owning the process of our growth. I was curious if you could just explain to us from your perspective, like what's the difference from owning the process of our growth and like trying to control everything and do it all on our own?
Yeah, this is a good one for me. I think about my sponsor immediately, who she always is the first to say, Jackie, you were trying to play God. And I know that when I try to do that, my life becomes unmanageable. It is unmanageable for me to control the people around me, their emotions, their outcomes. And so God is much better at that role than I am. She also taught me one of my favorite phrases. And y'all, this woman is about 70. She loved Jesus. She's a spiritual director. She says, Jackie, look for the AFGOs. AFGO, another pick your favorite word, fabulous, growth opportunity. every day.
Thank you for breaking that down
you're welcome.
for us. Yeah.
You get to choose your own adventure. Every day I'm presented with ways that I can grow. And so I think ownership is a healthy ownership of growth is less about forcing ourselves and more about intentional small steps, like strength training, right? I'm not going to go into the gym and do 100 reps and use 50-pound weights unless I want an injury. And so growth happens through those smaller reps, like honesty, like being vulnerable, having courage through prayer, through all those things that we mentioned earlier, or noticing when I'm operating out of a shame narrative or out of people pleasing. And so the difference for me, I think the difference is that control tries to force growth, whereas ownership partners with it.
Beautiful. Jackie, you are a gift to our congregation, and we're so appreciative of you sharing it with us today. So let's give her a round of
And for
applause.
Lowell and Carla. Yay.
I want you all to hear the good news today. Jesus is always, always, always speaking to us. He never stops sowing his seed. He sows and he sows and he sows. He is good, and he is taking us someplace good for our good and for the good of others. And so how is it that we can just cooperate with his unending, never giving up, always and forever grace that's at work in our lives? How can we work with him instead of against him or maybe even without him, so that he can produce a crop 100 or 60 or 30 times what he has sown. The invitation today is not to perfection. It is to participation. As followers, we are called to own the process of our growth. And so as the band comes back to play for us today, they're going to quietly play for just a few moments. And what I want to invite you to do is to get back out your chart if you've got one. If you don't, we're going to put it back on the screen. But as you look at this, take a moment to come before Jesus and to get honest. To maybe take a pen or just your finger and to point to the place where you find yourself today. And just tell him honestly where you are. And then consider, what is that one small step? Not a giant leap, but that one small step that you can take in a healthy direction in the week ahead. Jesus is speaking. Let's listen for his voice together. Let's pray. Jesus, we are so grateful that you are present no matter what kind of soil we find ourselves being today. That you are our God who understands that there are times where we just need to be the path, where we need to have some rest and restoration, and you meet with us there. You understand that there are times that life just throws far more at us than we were ever meant to handle, and you meet with us and weep with us there. You're a God who understands that worries creep in, that they can get out of control, that they can begin to overwhelm us. And so you sit with us in the midst of that chaos to be a calming presence. And so God, today, wherever we find ourselves, we know that you are there and that you are gentle with us, that you just keep speaking, that you never stop, that you don't force us or push us, but you invite us. You invite us to move toward a more healthy place where we can thrive. And so, Jesus, in these next moments, would you help us to just get clear on where it is that we are today, and to not just hear, but to start to understand. In some small way, help us to piece it together and to take that one small step forward with you. We pray this in the name of the one who loves us far more than we can ever begin to grasp.